The veil smelled like death. Not the fresh kind, the slow, creeping decay of dreams left to rot in the dark. Elara stood at the chapel entrance, her fingers clutching the black fabric that hid her face, and wondered if this was how lambs felt before slaughter. Aware. Resigned. Already gone. Move, the escort guard grunted, shoving her forward. The Silvermoon Chapel had seen better days. Cracks spider-webbed across the stone walls, and half the pews sat empty, a fitting venue for a wedding nobody wanted to witness. Those who'd bothered to show up weren't here to celebrate. They came to watch the trader's daughter finally pay for her father's sins. Elara's shoes scraped against the worn floor. Each step echoed in the hollow space, a drumbeat counting down to the end of everything she'd once hoped her life might be. "Can't believe they're actually going through with it," someone whispered. "Poor bastard king. Stuck with her. Cursed blood. Nothing good ever comes from the thorn line." She'd heard worse. After her father tried to assassinate the old Alpha King 5 years ago, the whispers had turned to shouts, then fists, then worse. Her mother hadn't died of shame like everyone said. She died because shame was easier to explain than suicide. Elara was 19 and alone, a debt to be paid in flesh. At the altar, Alpha King Kale waited. He didn't turn when she approached. Didn't acknowledge her existence beyond the slight tightening of his jaw. He stood like a statue carved from ice and rage, tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell just past his collar and eyes the color of winter storms. Handsome in the way predators were handsome. Beautiful and deadly. His reputation had reached even her. Merciless in battle. Cruel to weakness. And worst of all, cursed by love, his first mate had died under mysterious circumstances 3 years ago. Some said he'd killed her himself when she tried to leave him. Now he was forced to take another bride. A worthless Omega. A traitor's daughter. Lucky them both. Beside Kale, his beta Marcus sneered down at her. "The packless rat arrives." "Enough," Kale said, voice flat. The priest cleared his throat. He looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Shall we begin?" Kale gave a curt nod. The ceremony was a mockery. No flowers. No music. No pretense of joy. The priest rushed through the words like they burned his tongue, and Elara repeated her vows in a whisper that barely carried past her veil. When it came time for Kale's vows, he spoke each word like a prison sentence. "I take you as maid and wife, bound by pack law and blood debt. Not love. Not choice. Debt. You will serve your purpose and stay out of my way," he added, off script. The priest winced. A few gasps rippled through the sparse crowd. Elara's hands trembled as Kale gripped her wrist, not gently, just firmly enough to seal the bond. His skin was fever-hot against hers, and for a moment, something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe. Or disgust. "By the moon's witness, you are bound," the priest said quickly. "You may." He didn't get to finish. A presence shifted in the crowd. Elara felt it like a cold breath against her neck. She turned slightly, peering through the veil's mesh, and her blood froze. An old woman stood in the back row where no one had been seconds before. Ancient, hunched, with eyes that glowed silver in the dim light. She wore rags that might have been gray or might have been woven from shadows themselves. The woman's gaze locked onto Elara with an intensity that made her bones ache. Then her lips moved. No sound emerged, but Elara read the words clearly. "He cannot know what you are." Elara's breath caught. She blinked, and the woman was gone. Vanished like smoke. "What is it?" Kale's voice cut through her shock. "Nothing," Elara whispered. "I thought I saw." "I don't care what you saw." He released her wrist. "The ceremony is complete. We leave immediately." "But the reception." "There is no reception." Marcus stepped forward, his smile cruel. "No one here wants to celebrate this farce. You should be grateful the king is willing to house you at all. Elara bit back the response, clawing up her throat. She'd learned long ago that fighting back only made things worse. Cale turned without another word and strode toward the chapel doors. The crowd parted like water, everyone careful not to meet his eyes. Marcus followed, leaving Elara to trail behind like an unwanted shadow. The afternoon sun hit her as she stepped outside, and even through the veil, the brightness stung. A black carriage waited in the courtyard, its horses stamping impatiently. "Get in," Cale ordered. She climbed into the carriage, her dress catching on the step. The interior was all dark leather and cold metal. Cale entered after her, sitting as far from her as the space allowed. Marcus took his position with the driver. The carriage lurched forward. Silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating. Elara kept her hands folded in her lap, acutely aware of Cale's presence across from her. He hadn't looked at her once since the ceremony ended. She might as well have been furniture. "I suppose," she said quietly, "I should thank you for agreeing to this." "Don't. My Pax debt was paid in full with your signature on that contract." His voice was ice wrapped in steel. "You cost me a considerable sum and political capital. The last thing I need is your gratitude." Heat crawled up her neck. "I didn't ask for this either." "No. You simply had the misfortune of being born to a traitor." His eyes finally cut to her, cold, assessing. "Tell me, did your father ever express remorse before they took his head?" The question hit like a physical blow. "I was 14. They didn't let me see him before." "Pity. I would have liked to know if madness runs in your blood or if treachery is simply your family trait." Elara's nails bit into her palms. "My father's choices weren't mine." "Perhaps. But his debts are." Cale leaned back, dismissing her. "When we arrive at Bloodstone, you'll be given quarters in the East Tower. You'll take your meals there. You won't attend court, councils, or any public functions unless I require it. Servants will be assigned to ensure you have what you need. You're locking me away. I'm keeping you out of sight. There's a difference." "Is there?" Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. "Would you prefer I parade you through the castle so everyone can see the king's desperate bride? The Omega he was forced to take because no one else would have her?" The words cut deep because they were true. Elara looked away. "I thought not." Cale's voice softened, but not with kindness. With finality. "You wanted to know your place. Now you do." The carriage rolled on through the countryside, leaving Silvermoon territory behind. Elara watched the familiar landscape disappear, replaced by darker forests and rocky hills. They were heading north, toward the Bloodstone Kingdom, a place she'd only heard about in whispered warnings. The sun began its descent. And that's when the burning started. At first, Elara thought it was just the corset laced too tight or the stress of the day manifesting physically. But the heat intensified, concentrating on her lower back, right where her birthmark lay hidden. She'd had the mark since birth. A crescent moon shape, pale against her skin. Her mother had always kept it covered, told her never to show anyone, never to speak of it. "It's just a birthmark," she'd insisted. Nothing more. But it had never burned before. Elara shifted uncomfortably, trying not to draw attention. The heat grew sharper, like a brand pressed against her skin. She bit her lip to keep from crying out. Cale noticed. Of course he did. "What's wrong with you?" "Nothing. I'm fine." "You're sweating." His eyes narrowed. "Are you ill?" "No, the pain spiked, and she gasped despite herself. Cale moved fast. One moment he was across from her, the next he'd crossed the carriage, gripping her shoulders. "What's happening?" "I don't know," she admitted, panic creeping into her voice. "My back, it's..." His hand moved to her spine, and the moment he touched the spot where the mark burned, they both jerked back. A flash of light, not visible, but felt, ripped through the carriage. Kale stared at his hand like it had betrayed him. What the hell was that? Elara couldn't answer. The burning had stopped as suddenly as it started, leaving behind only a phantom warmth and the terrifying certainty that something fundamental had just changed. The carriage suddenly lurched to a halt. Marcus's voice called from outside, sharp with alarm, "My king! You need to see this." Kale threw open the door and jumped out. Elara followed on shaking legs, her veil still in place. They stood on a ridge overlooking a valley. The Bloodstone Palace rose in the distance, black spires against the darkening sky. But between them and home, surrounding the carriage on all sides, stood dozens of figures. Not wolves from any pack Elara recognized. These were wrong. Twisted. Their eyes glowed red in the fading light, and their bodies seemed to shift between human and wolf without fully committing to either form. Shadow wolves. The corrupted ones that lived in the wastelands between kingdoms. The ones that answered to no alpha and served only chaos. They shouldn't have been this far south. Shouldn't have been organized. Shouldn't have been chanting. But they were. A low, rhythmic sound that made Elara's blood run cold. Ilare, Ilare, Ilare of the Moonborn. Kale went very, very still. Then, slowly, he turned to look at her. The expression on his face was something beyond fury. Beyond fear. It was recognition. "What?" he said quietly, each word sharp enough to cut. "Are you?" If you are enjoying this video, do well to like this video and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 2. The shadow wolves scattered like smoke when Kale's guards finally arrived, but the damage was done. They'd delivered their message, and worse, they'd known her name. Known what she was when Elara herself barely understood it. Moonborn. The word tasted like ash and old blood. Kale hadn't spoken to her during the remaining journey to Bloodstone. He'd ridden his horse alongside the carriage instead, his posture rigid with barely contained rage. Marcus kept shooting her looks through the window, part suspicion, part something that looked almost like fear. When the palace finally came into view, Elara understood why they called it Bloodstone. The fortress rose from black rock that seemed to swallow light rather than reflect it. Towers stretched toward the sky like clawed fingers, and the walls were thick enough to withstand a siege from hell itself. This wasn't just a castle. It was a declaration of power. Of dominance. Of exactly what happened to those who challenged the king who ruled here. The carriage rolled through gates that groaned like dying things, and Elara felt the weight of the place settle over her like a shroud. No one greeted them. No fanfare, no court assembled to welcome their new queen. Just cold stone and colder silence. "Take her to the East Tower," Kale ordered, dismounting. He still hadn't looked at her. "Post guards. No one enters or leaves without my permission." "You're imprisoning me?" Elara found her voice, though it came out smaller than she'd intended. "I'm keeping you alive." He finally met her eyes, and what she saw there made her breath catch. Not hatred. Something worse. Uncertainty. "Until I understand what you are, you stay locked away. I'm your wife. You're a question I don't have an answer to. And questions get people killed." He turned to Marcus. "Double the northern patrols. I want to know how those shadow wolves got past our borders and why they were looking for her." Marcus nodded, his jaw tight. "And if they come back? Kill them all." Kale strode toward the main keep without another word. Two guards materialized beside Elara. They didn't touch her, but their presence made it clear she had no choice but to follow. The East Tower was exactly as welcoming as it sounded. They climbed narrow stone stairs that spiraled up and up until Elara's legs burned. The room they finally shoved her into was circular, with one window too high to reach and furniture that looked like it hadn't been used in decades. A bed with a thin mattress. A chair with a broken leg. A wash basin covered in dust. "Dinner will be brought at sunset," one guard said. "Don't try the door. It'll be locked." They left. The key turned with a sound like bones breaking. Elara stood in the center of the room and felt the full weight of her situation crash down. Married to a man who despised her. Locked in a tower like the monster everyone believed her to be. And somewhere in the night, creatures that shouldn't exist were calling her name. She sank onto the bed and finally let herself shake. Hours passed. The sun crawled across the sky and began its descent. True to their word, someone brought food, a servant girl who couldn't have been more than 16, with mousy brown hair and eyes that wouldn't meet Elara's. "Thank you," Elara said softly. The girl flinched like she'd been struck. She set the tray down and practically ran for the door. "Wait, what's your name?" The girl paused at the threshold, clearly torn between obedience and fear. "Mira, my lady." "Mira. That's pretty. You shouldn't be nice to me." Myra's voice dropped to a whisper. "They're calling you the veiled wretch. Saying you're cursed. That you'll bring darkness to Bloodstone just like your father brought death to Silvermoon." The words stung, but Elara had heard worse. "And what do you think?" Mira finally looked at her, really looked. "I think you seem lonely." Then she was gone, the door locking behind her. Elara picked at the food without tasting it. Bread. Cheese. Some kind of meat that had gone cold. She forced herself to eat anyway. She'd need her strength for whatever came next. Night fell like a curtain dropping. And then the summons came. The same 2 guards appeared at her door, their expressions carefully neutral. "The king requires your presence." Elara's stomach twisted. Now? Now. They led her through corridors that seemed to shift and writhe in the torchlight. The palace was a maze designed to confuse and intimidate. They passed servants who pressed themselves against walls to avoid her, courtiers who watched with hungry, curious eyes. Finally, they stopped outside an ornate door carved with wolves locked in eternal battle. "The king's chambers." One guard knocked twice. Kale's voice came from within, "Enter." They opened the door and practically shoved Elara inside before pulling it shut behind her. She heard the lock turn and knew she was trapped. The room was massive. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, flames casting dancing shadows across dark furniture and darker tapestries. Weapons hung on the walls like art, swords, axes, things with edges that looked designed specifically for causing pain. Kale stood by the window, still dressed in his traveling clothes, a glass of something amber in his hand. He didn't turn when she entered. "I didn't choose this marriage," he said to the glass. "You know that, don't you?" "Yes." What else could she say? "My kingdom needs alliances. Your pack had debts." It was practical. He drank, the movement sharp. "I expected an Omega who'd be grateful for the protection of my name. Someone who'd know her place and cause no trouble. I never asked for trouble." "No. You just carry it in your blood." He finally turned, and his eyes were harder than the stone walls around them. "Do you know what Moonborn means?" Elara shook her head. "It's a myth. A ghost story we tell children to make them behave. The Moonborn were descendants of the moon goddess herself, powerful beyond measure, blessed with abilities that made them nearly gods." His lips twisted. "Until they went mad with that power and tried to enslave every pack in existence. 200 years ago, the Alpha Kings united and hunted them to extinction. Every last one. Men, women, children. They burned the bloodline from the world." The words hit like blows. "That's not," my mother never said. "Because your mother was hiding what you are. What you could become." Kale set his glass down with controlled precision. "Those shadow wolves knew your name. Knew your bloodline. That means someone out there knows the truth about you. And if they know, others will find out. I don't understand any of this. I'm nobody. Just an Omega. Remove the veil." The command cracked through the air like a whip. Elara's hands went to the fabric instinctively. "Why?" "Because I won't bed someone whose face I haven't seen. And like it or not, this marriage needs to be consummated. I need an heir, and I'll get this over with quickly. Heat flooded her cheeks. You want to, now? Would you prefer I wait until I like you? His voice was cruel. This is duty. Nothing more. Now remove the veil or I'll do it myself. Elara's fingers trembled as they found the pins holding the fabric in place. She'd worn this veil for 5 years, hiding behind it, letting it make her invisible. Without it, she'd be exposed. Vulnerable. But she had no choice. 1 pin. 2. 3. The veil slipped free. For a moment, nothing happened. Cale stared at her with the same bored indifference he'd shown all day, his expression carefully neutral. Then his face changed. The glass in his hand slipped, shattering on the stone floor. Holy hell, he breathed. Elara wanted to cover herself, but there was nowhere to hide. She knew what he was seeing, what everyone saw when they finally looked at her without the veil's protection. Silver hair that cascaded past her shoulders, catching the firelight like moonbeams made solid. Violet eyes that had made her mother weep because they marked her as different, as other. Skin so pale it seemed to glow from within. Features that didn't quite fit human proportions, too symmetrical, too perfect, like someone had carved her from marble and forgotten to make her real. She wasn't beautiful. She was otherworldly. Unsettling. Wrong. Who are you? Cale's voice had gone quiet, dangerous. He crossed the room in 3 strides and grabbed her wrist, yanking her closer. What are you? I don't know. Don't lie to me. I'm not. I swear, I don't know what any of this means. Then her back exploded with pain. Elara screamed. The birthmark, the crescent moon she'd hidden her entire life, felt like someone had pressed a white-hot brand against her spine. Light erupted from her skin, so bright it painted the room in shades of silver and shadow. Cale stumbled back, shielding his eyes. And Elara was drowning. Not in water. In visions. In memories that weren't hers. She saw a great war. Wolves tearing at each other under a blood-red moon. She saw the moon goddess herself, beautiful and terrible, weeping silver tears that fell like rain. She saw fire consuming entire packs. She saw a woman who looked like her, screaming as Alpha Kings drove silver through her heart. She saw prophecy written in starlight and blood. The last daughter of the cursed line will either unite the kingdoms or bring eternal darkness. The words burned themselves into her mind, and she knew with certainty that transcended logic, that she was that daughter. The last. The final chance for redemption or the harbinger of the end. The light faded. The visions receded. Elara collapsed, but Cale caught her before she hit the floor. He lowered her carefully, and she realized he was staring at her back. At the mark that had revealed itself. His face had gone pale as death. It's impossible, he whispered. Your bloodline was exterminated. Every moonborn hunted down and killed. There can't be any left. There can't. The door exploded inward. Marcus burst into the room, his clothes torn and bloodied, his eyes wild with panic. 3 guards rushed in behind him, weapons drawn. My king. Marcus gasped, struggling to catch his breath. The northern border, shadow wolves have breached the barrier. Dozens of them. They're not attacking randomly. They're organized. Moving with purpose. Cale stood, his hand still on Elara's shoulder. How many casualties? None yet. That's the problem. They're not fighting. They're just chanting. Marcus's eyes cut to Elara, and she saw the recognition there. The fear. They're chanting a name, over and over. Elara of the Moonborn. The room went silent except for the crackling fire. Cale looked down at Elara, still crumpled on his floor, her silver hair spread around her like a fallen halo, her violet eyes wide with terror and confusion. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of kingdoms shifting on their foundations. Lock down the palace. No one in or out. Double guards on every entrance. He pulled Alara to her feet, his grip firm but no longer cruel. And someone get me every book we have on the Moonborn. Every story. Every legend. Every scrap of history. My king, one guard ventured, those texts were ordered destroyed after the purge. Then find the ones that survived. Because apparently, Kale's eyes never left Alara's face, the past isn't as dead as we thought. If you are enjoying this video, do well to like this video and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 3. The guards dragged Alara back to her tower room before she could catch her breath. Kale didn't even look at her as they hauled her away, his attention already shifted to Marcus and the crisis unfolding at the northern border. She was a problem to be contained. Nothing more. The door slammed shut. The lock turned. And Alara was alone again with the burning mark on her back and questions that had no answers. She pressed her forehead against the cold stone wall and tried to steady her breathing. The visions had left her shaken, fragments of memories that couldn't possibly be hers bleeding through her mind like watercolors in rain. The last daughter of the cursed line will either unite the kingdoms or bring eternal darkness. What did that even mean? How could she unite or destroy anything when she could barely understand what was happening to her? A voice whispered through her thoughts, soft as silk and twice as dangerous, "Because you're finally waking up, daughter." Alara spun around. The room was empty. Not out there, the voice purred. In here. We've always been here, waiting. Who are you? Alara whispered to the shadows. We are what remains. The echo of what was. Your blood, your bone, your destiny. More voices joined the first, a chorus of whispers that made her head pound. Women's voices, mostly. Some young, some ancient. All carrying the weight of death and time. Your mother tried to silence us. Bound us with dark magic so you could live a normal life. But you can't cage the moon forever. The seal is breaking, child. And with it, your power returns. Alara sank onto the bed, hands pressed to her temples. I don't want power. I just want to survive. Laughter rippled through her mind, not cruel, but sad. Understanding. Survival is exactly why you need us. They're coming for you. They've always been coming. Before she could ask what that meant, the voices faded like mist, leaving only silence and the frantic beating of her heart. In the war room 3 floors below, Kale faced his council with barely restrained fury. The room was circular, dominated by a massive table carved from a single piece of blackwood. Maps covered every surface, marked with territories and borders and the endless calculations of power. His most trusted advisors had assembled within minutes of his summons, 5 alphas from the strongest packs in his kingdom, plus Marcus. Tell me everything, Kale ordered, his voice dangerously quiet. How did Shadow Wolves breach our borders? Lord Garrett, Alpha of the Eastern Ridge Pack, spoke first. He was old enough to have fought in the last Great War, his face mapped with scars. They came through the Whispering Pass. Walked right through our patrols like they weren't there. No attack. No violence. Just, walking. Chanting. Chanting her name, Marcus added, his jaw tight. Over and over. Like a summoning. Shadow wolves don't organize, Lady Petra of the Southern Marsh said. She was sharp as a blade and twice as deadly. They're corrupted. Mad. They barely remember they were once wolves at all. Unless someone's controlling them, Kale said. Silence fell like a hammer. Lord Davion, youngest of the council, cleared his throat. My king, with respect, what is she? The girl you married. The Shadow Wolves called her Moonborn. Kale's hands curled into fists on the table. Get me Scholar Aldrich. Now. Marcus nodded and disappeared into the corridor. He returned minutes later with an elderly man who looked like he'd been carved from parchment and dust. Scholar Aldrich had served 3 generations of Bloodstone kings, his knowledge of history unmatched. You summoned me, Your Majesty. His voice trembled with age. Tell them about the Moonborn. Aldrich's face went pale. That knowledge was supposed to die with the purge. Tell them. The old scholar sank into a chair, suddenly looking every one of his 70 years. The Moonborn were the first children of the moon goddess herself. Direct descendants, blessed with power beyond mortal wolves. They could manipulate shadows, speak to the dead, bend other wolves to their will with just a thought. Some say they were meant to be guardians. Protectors of the balance between our world and the spirit realm. But? Kale prompted. But power corrupts. Always. Aldrich's hands shook. 300 years ago, the Moonborn grew arrogant. They believed their divine blood made them superior. They began enslaving other packs, forcing them to worship the Moonborn as gods. Those who refused were slaughtered. Entire bloodlines wiped out. Lady Petra leaned forward. So the Alpha Kings united against them. They had no choice. The Moonborn were going to destroy everything. Aldrich met Kale's eyes. The purge lasted 7 years. 7 years of hunting down every man, woman, and child with Moonborn blood. It was brutal. Necessary. And thorough. By the end, the line was extinct. Apparently not, Marcus said coldly. Lord Garrett slammed his fist on the table. Then we finish what our ancestors started. The girl is a threat. Execute her before her power fully manifests. The prophecy, Aldrich began. What prophecy? Kale's voice could have cut glass. The scholar looked like he wanted to disappear into the stone floor. There was a prophecy made during the purge. By the last Moonborn queen before she died. She said the line would return. That the last daughter would either unite all kingdoms in peace or drown the world in eternal darkness. He paused. She said the choice would be made by the one who loved her and killed her in equal measure. The room went very still. Marcus broke the silence, his voice hard. My king, you know what must be done. The prophecy is clear, she'll bring darkness. We can't risk. You weren't there. Kale cut him off. When the mark appeared. When the light came from her. She wasn't in control. She was terrified. Which makes her more dangerous, Marcus insisted. Unchecked power in the hands of someone who doesn't understand it. That's how kingdoms fall. He's right, Lord Davion said quietly. I don't want to execute an innocent girl. But can we risk the alternative? Kale looked around the table at faces he'd trusted for years. Faces now tight with fear and certainty. They'd already decided her fate. But something in him resisted. Something that had nothing to do with logic or strategy. When he'd looked into her violet eyes, he'd felt recognition. Like his soul knew her even though they'd just met. It was insane. Impossible. And terrifying. Double the guard on her tower, he said finally. No one enters or leaves without my explicit permission. Marcus, I want every book on Moonborn history brought to my chambers. Everything that survived the purge. And the girl? Lady Petra asked. She lives. For now. Kale stood, ending the discussion. Until I understand what we're dealing with, she's more valuable alive than dead. Dismissed. They filed out, Marcus lingering at the door. You're making a mistake. Then it's mine to make. When he was alone, Kale poured himself a drink he didn't want and stared at the maps without seeing them. His mind kept returning to Alara's face when the visions hit. The way she'd crumpled like someone had cut her strings. The absolute terror in her eyes. She hadn't known. He'd stake his kingdom on it. Whatever she was, she'd been as blindsided as he was. But ignorance didn't make her less dangerous. Alara jerked awake to darkness. Not the normal darkness of night. This was wrong, thick and oily, pressing against her skin like something alive. She sat up, heart hammering. Then she heard the breathing. Someone else was in the room. Who's there? Her voice came out steadier than she felt. A match flared. In its brief light, she saw 3 figures dressed in black, faces covered, blades gleaming in their hands. Assassins. Nothing personal, one said, his voice muffled behind a mask. Just orders. They moved fast. But the voices in Alara's head moved faster. Protect yourself. Use what you are. Let us in. Power erupted from Alara like a dam breaking. She didn't know what she was doing, didn't think, just reacted. The shadows in the room came alive at her command, writhing like serpents. They shot toward the assassins with predatory hunger. One man screamed as darkness wrapped around his throat. He clawed at nothing, at shadow made solid, as it squeezed the life from him. The second tried to run. The shadows caught him at the door, tendrils piercing through his back and erupting from his chest in a spray of blood that looked black in the darkness. The third dropped his blade and fell to his knees. Please. But Alara couldn't stop it. The power had taken over, responding to her terror with lethal efficiency. Shadows lifted the man off the ground and slammed him against the wall hard enough to crack stone. Again. Again. Until he stopped moving. Then, as suddenly as it began, the power receded. The shadows returned to their natural places. And Alara was left staring at 3 corpses. "Oh God," she whispered. "Oh God, what did I do?" "You survived," the ancestral voices said simply. "As you were meant to. I killed them. I murdered. They came to murder you first. This is what you are, daughter. This is your birthright." Alara's legs gave out. She sat hard on the floor, shaking so badly her teeth chattered. Blood pooled around the bodies, creeping toward her across the stone. The door burst open. Guards poured in, weapons drawn, with Kale right behind them. He took in the scene with one sweeping glance: the dead assassins, the shadows still writhing subtly in the corners, and Alara sitting in the middle of it all like the eye of a storm. The guards raised their weapons, but Kale held up a hand. "Wait." He crossed the room slowly, boots crunching on broken stone, and crouched in front of her. Alara couldn't meet his eyes. Couldn't bear to see the disgust she knew would be there. "Did you know what you were?" he asked quietly. "Before tonight?" "No." The word came out broken. "I swear, I didn't know I could, that I was." She finally looked at him, and what she saw in his face wasn't disgust. It was something far more complicated. "I'm a monster. You're scared." He stood and offered his hand. "There's a difference." Alara stared at his hand like it might bite her. "I just killed 3 people with shadows. How can you even stand to be near me?" "Because I've killed more than 3 people. And unlike you, I knew exactly what I was doing." His hand didn't waver. "Now get up. We need to talk." She took his hand. The moment their skin touched, the world exploded into light. The vision hit them both like a physical blow. They were standing in a field of silver grass under a full moon. But they weren't themselves, or rather, they were and they weren't. Different bodies. Different time. But the same souls looking out through different eyes. Kale, no, someone who was Kale but also wasn't, held Alara against him, his face twisted with anguish. "Please," she begged, and her voice was Alara's voice but older, wearier. "Please don't do this. Remember what we were. Remember what we promised." "I remember," he said, and tears tracked down his face. "Gods help me, I remember everything. But they'll kill my entire pack if I don't, if I can't. Then let them kill us together." She cupped his face. "I'd rather die by your hand than live knowing you betrayed everything we built." "I'm sorry." The words were broken glass. "I'm so sorry." The silver blade gleamed in moonlight as he drove it through her heart. She didn't scream. Just held his gaze as the light left her eyes, and whispered, "I'll find you again. In the next life. And the next. And one day, you'll remember. You'll remember, and you'll have to live with what you've done. They broke apart, gasping. Kale stumbled back, and Alara saw her own horror reflected in his face. That wasn't real, he said hoarsely. That couldn't have been real. But they both knew it was. Some truths were too deep to deny. You killed me, Alara whispered. You loved me, and you killed me anyway. Kale looked at his hands like they belonged to someone else. And you cursed me to remember. If you are enjoying this video, do well to like this video and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 4. The vision hung between them like smoke that wouldn't clear. Kale released Alara's hand and stepped back, his expression shuddering closed. The guards were watching, waiting for orders, and he pulled himself together with visible effort. Remove the bodies, he commanded. Quietly. I want to know who sent them and how they got past my security. His eyes cut to Marcus, who'd appeared in the doorway. Triple the guard on this tower. No one enters without my direct authorization. My king, Marcus began, glancing at Alara with barely concealed disgust. Perhaps the girl should be moved somewhere more secure. She stays here. Under my protection. Kale's tone left no room for argument. I'll be posting myself outside her door. Marcus's jaw tightened. You can't be serious. You're the king. You can't stand guard like some common. I can do whatever I damn well please. Kale turned back to Alara, and for a moment, something vulnerable flickered across his face before he crushed it. We'll talk in the morning. Until then, stay in this room. He left before she could respond, taking the guards and the bodies with him. Only Marcus lingered, his pale eyes fixed on Alara with an intensity that made her skin crawl. Whatever game you're playing, he said softly, it won't work. The king may be temporarily blinded by whatever trick you've pulled, but I see you for what you are. A threat. And threats get eliminated. Then he was gone too, leaving Alara alone with blood on the floor and questions that multiplied like weeds. She didn't sleep. Couldn't. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that vision, felt the blade piercing her heart, saw the anguish on Kale's face as he killed her. As he'd loved her and murdered her in the same breath. It was a different life, she told herself. Different people. But it hadn't felt different. It had felt like truth. Dawn came gray and cold. Alara heard movement outside her door, the changing of guards. And then Kale's voice, low and commanding, dismissing them entirely. The door opened. He stood there in simple training leathers, dark circles under his eyes suggesting he'd slept as poorly as she had. Get dressed, he said without preamble. Something you can move in. Why? Because if you're going to have power, you need to learn how to control it. And if you can kill with shadows, you need to know how to kill without them too. He looked at the bloodstains that still darkened the floor. The assassins won't be the last. You need to be able to defend yourself. Alara blinked. You're going to train me? I'm going to make sure you don't accidentally murder someone every time you get frightened. His expression was unreadable. Consider it a survival skill. 20 minutes later, she found herself in an enclosed courtyard deep within the palace grounds, surrounded by high walls that blocked them from prying eyes. Weapons lined one wall, swords, daggers, staffs. Morning mist clung to the cobblestones. Kale tossed her a wooden practice sword. She caught it clumsily. I'm not a fighter, she protested. You are now. He took a stance across from her, his own practice blade held with casual expertise. Attack me. I don't know how. Then learn fast. He came at her. Not gently, not slowly. Alara barely got her sword up in time to block a strike that sent vibrations rattling up her arms. He pressed forward, and she stumbled back, desperately trying to parry blows that came from angles she couldn't anticipate. Stop thinking, Kale ordered. Your body knows what to do. Trust your instincts. My instincts say run. Then you die. He swept her legs out from under her. She hit the ground hard, breath exploding from her lungs. Again. They went for hours. Elara lost count of how many times she ended up on the ground, bruised and frustrated. But slowly, something shifted. Her body began to remember movements she'd never learned. The ancestral voices whispered guidance: shift your weight, anticipate his left side, he favors that shoulder, and she found herself moving faster, blocking more strikes. Until finally, incredibly, her blade tapped against Kale's ribs. They both froze. Good, he said quietly. Again. It became routine over the next week. Mornings in the courtyard, learning to fight. Afternoons locked in her tower while Kale dealt with kingdom business. And nights were when the real training happened. The ancestral voices grew stronger, more distinct. Elara learned their names, their stories. Her grandmother, Celeste, who'd hidden from the purge for 15 years before being discovered and burned. Her great-great-aunt Morgana, who could summon storms. A dozen others, going back centuries, all carrying fragments of power that now pooled in Elara's blood. They taught her things she'd never imagined possible. How to step into shadows and emerge elsewhere. How to speak to the recently dead and pull answers from their fading spirits. How to touch someone's mind and feel their emotions, their fears, their deepest secrets. But never force control, Celeste warned, her voice sad. That's how our people fell. They stopped asking and started taking. Promise me you'll remember the difference. I promise, Elara whispered into the darkness. She practiced in secret, small things. Making shadows dance. Calling to the spirit of a bird that had died in her window. She could feel her power growing, responding to her will instead of her fear. And she discovered something else: her mother's death wasn't what everyone believed. The vision came unbidden while she slept, a memory locked in her blood. Her mother, Lyanna, beautiful and terrified, facing a figure in the darkness of their cottage. Please, Lyanna begged. She's just a child. She doesn't even know what she is. I've bound her power. She'll never be a threat. Until the binding breaks. The figure's voice was male, cultured, familiar in a way that made Elara's skin crawl. The Moonborn line cannot be allowed to continue. You should have died with the others. Then kill me. But spare her. Please. I wish I could. But orders are orders. The blade had been quick. Efficient. And when Elara's mother fell, the figure stood over her body and whispered, "Forgive me." Elara woke gasping. She knew that voice. Had heard it recently. But before she could place it, Kale arrived for morning training. Something was changing between them. Elara felt it in the way his hands lingered when he corrected her stance. In how his eyes tracked her movements even when he thought she wasn't looking. In the careful distance he maintained, as if afraid to get too close. One evening after training, they sat on the courtyard wall, sharing water and comfortable silence. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of amber and blood. "Why did you really agree to marry me?" Elara asked. "And don't say debt. There must have been other ways to settle it." Kale was quiet for a long moment. "My first mate, Sarah. She died 3 years ago." "I heard." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. Everyone thought I killed her." He stared at the horizon. They were half right. "I didn't drive the blade myself, but I might as well have." She was miserable here. Hated the politics, the violence, the weight of being queen. She begged me to let her go, to annul the bond. But I was selfish. I thought I could make her happy. I thought love was enough. What happened? She took her own life rather than spend another day trapped in this palace. In a marriage she never wanted. His hands clenched. "So when your pax debt came up, when they offered you as settlement, I thought, maybe I could give someone the thing Sarah wanted most. Freedom. You'd have my protection, my name, but nothing else. You could live your own life, away from me." Elara's chest tightened. That's why you put me in the tower. You were trying to give me space. I was trying not to make the same mistake twice. He finally looked at her, and his eyes held something raw and complicated. But you're not Sarah. And this bond one feel forming, it terrifies me more than anything I've ever faced. Bond? Elara's heart stuttered. What do you mean? The mating bond. It's rare. Sacred. I felt it with Sarah, and when she died, I thought I'd never feel it again. They say you only get one true mate. His jaw worked. But with you, God's help me, it's there. Stronger every day. Which makes no sense because we're enemies. You're everything my bloodline swore to destroy. We're not our ancestors. Aren't we? His voice turned bitter. I killed you once, Elara. In another life, I loved you and killed you anyway. What's to stop history from repeating? She didn't have an answer to that. They sat in silence until Kale stood abruptly. It's late. We should. Elara caught his hand. The touch sent electricity through her, and she saw the same jolt register on his face. You're my enemy, he said, but it came out like a question. Then why does it feel like you're the only one who sees me? She stood, and suddenly they were inches apart, his heat radiating against her skin. Everyone else sees a curse. A threat. A monster. But you see me. I see someone I could destroy. But his hand came up, fingers ghosting along her jaw. Or someone who could destroy me. Maybe we don't have to destroy each other. His eyes dropped to her lips. She swayed closer, drawn by something deeper than logic or sense. His breath hitched. Then he jerked back like she'd burned him. No. The word was harsh. This can't happen. I won't, I can't make that mistake again. He left her standing alone in the courtyard, her heart hammering and lips tingling from a kiss that never happened. Elara stormed back to her tower, emotions churning. She was so distracted that she almost missed it, the shadow that didn't belong, shifting near the archive's wing. She pressed herself against a pillar and watched as Marcus emerged from a doorway, looking around carefully before heading down a corridor that led to the guest chambers. Her instincts screamed wrong. Elara followed, keeping to the shadows. She'd gotten better at that, using darkness as camouflage. Marcus moved with purpose, stopping at a door that looked like all the others except for the silver ward scratched into the wood. Protection magic. Against Moonborn. He knocked 3 times. The door opened, and Elara's blood ran cold as she saw who stood inside. Shadow wolves. 2 of them, wearing human form but with eyes that glowed red. Did you bring it? One asked Marcus. He pulled out a vial of something dark and oily. From the girl herself. Collected from where she stood after the assassins died. Her power leaves a residue. Perfect. The master will be pleased. When will the rift open? Soon. Once her power fully awakens and we have enough anchor points. The shadow wolf smiled, revealing 2 sharp teeth. She's strong, this last daughter. Stronger than the prophecy predicted. When we pull her through, she'll tear open the veil between worlds without even meaning to. And my sister? Marcus's voice turned sharp. You promised I'd see her again. All who died in the purge will return. You'll have your revenge on the bloodlines that destroyed your family. The shadow wolf leaned closer. Just keep the king distracted. Keep him doubting. The girl trusts no one but him now. When we make our move, we need him compromised. Elara's mind raced. Marcus's sister had died in the Moonborn purge. That's why he hated her so much, not just fear of what she was, but personal revenge. She had to tell Kale. Had to warn him before. A hand clamped over her mouth from behind. Another Marcus emerged from the shadows behind her, the real one. The one in the room had been an illusion. Did you really think I wouldn't notice you following me? He whispered against her ear. You're powerful, girl, but still so naive. Elara tried to scream, tried to summon her shadows, but something was wrong. Her power flickered and died. She looked down and saw a silver blade pressed against her ribs. Silver disrupts moonborn magic, Marcus said pleasantly. Now, let's make this simple. You're going to walk with me to the king's chambers. And you're going to stay very, very quiet. The accusations came fast and brutal. By the time Cale arrived in the throne room, half his council was already there, roused from sleep by Marcus's urgent summons. Lord Garrett held up a vial of murky liquid. Poison, he announced. In the water supply for the eastern barracks. 20 wolves are sick. 3 are dying. And this was found in the girls' chambers. Marcus produced a matching vial with a flourish. Along with residue on her hands. Silver compound mixed with nightshade. Deadly to our kind. Cale's stomach dropped. That's impossible. She's been training with me. When would she have? Perhaps while you were distracted by whatever hold she has over you. Marcus's voice was gentle. Reasonable. My king, I know you want to believe in her. But the evidence is clear. She wouldn't. Wouldn't she? Lady Petra stepped forward. The prophecy says she'll bring darkness. Perhaps this is how it begins. Slow poisoning. Turning us against each other. Cale looked at Elara, held between 2 guards. Her eyes were wide with panic, and he could feel through the growing bond that she was terrified. But also, guilty. Did you do this? He asked quietly. No. But I need to tell you something about Marcus. More lies, Marcus interrupted. She'll say anything to save herself. Cale, please, just listen. But the council was shouting now, demanding justice, demanding execution. And Cale, caught between duty and a bond he didn't trust, made the choice that would haunt him. Take her to the silver dungeons, he ordered, his voice empty. Until we sort out the truth. No. Elara struggled against the guards. You don't understand. He's working with them. He's... Enough. Cale couldn't look at her. Couldn't bear to see the betrayal in her eyes that mirrored the vision, history repeating in different words. Get her out of my sight. As they dragged her away, Elara's voice echoed through the hall. You're making the same mistake. You're killing me again. The doors slammed shut. And Cale stood in the silence, wondering if he'd just condemned them both. If you are enjoying this video, do well to like this video and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 5. The Silver Dungeons lived up to their name. Every surface gleamed with the cursed metal, walls, floor, ceiling, even the bars of the cell door. The air itself tasted like copper and despair. Elara felt her power recoil the moment they threw her inside, retreating deep into her bones where it cowered and whimpered. The guards left without a word. The heavy door at the top of the stairs clanged shut, and she was alone in a silence so complete it pressed against her eardrums. She wrapped her arms around herself and tried not to shake. Tried not to think about the stories she'd heard of this place, that prisoners went mad within days. That the silver didn't just suppress magic. It amplified everything dark inside you until there was nothing left but screaming. Just stories, she told herself. Just. The walls began to whisper. At first, she thought it was the ancestral voices. But these weren't her grandmother's gentle guidance or her aunt's sharp warnings. These were different. Hungry. They crawled into her mind like worms burrowing through rotten wood. Traitor's daughter. Cursed blood. Your mother died because of you. Stop, Elara whispered. But the voices only grew louder, and suddenly she wasn't in the dungeon anymore. She was 14 again, standing in the town square with her mother's hand gripping hers too tight. The execution platform loomed ahead, and her father knelt on it with his hands bound and a hood over his face. Don't look, her mother begged. Elara, please don't look. But she couldn't look away. Couldn't stop watching as the executioner raised the silver axe. Couldn't unhear the sound of the blade falling or the wet thump as her father's head hit the wooden boards. The crowd had cheered. And Alara had screamed and screamed until her throat bled. The memory shifted, twisted. Now she was 16, finding her mother's body in their cottage. Lyanna's eyes were open and empty, blood pooling beneath her like a dark mirror. And young Alara had known, it wasn't suicide. But who would listen to the traitor's daughter? Your fault, the walls hissed. If you'd never been born, she'd still be alive. No, Alara gasped. That's not. Barely stand without nausea overwhelming him. My king, you don't look well, Lady Petra observed during the council meeting he'd called to review the evidence. I'm fine. He wasn't. He felt like his soul was being flayed. Continue. Lord Garrett shuffled papers. The poisoned water supply was definitely tampered with. But looking at the timeline Marcus provided, something doesn't add up. The girl was with you during the window when the poison would have been introduced. Cale's head snapped up. What? She couldn't have done it. You're her alibi. Garrett frowned. I should have noticed sooner, but Marcus was so certain. Where is Marcus? Cale stood abruptly, pain lancing through him. He said he was investigating the eastern barracks, trying to find accomplices. But Cale was already moving, his mind racing. If Alara hadn't poisoned the water, then someone had framed her. Someone who had access to her chambers, to evidence, to the council's ear. Someone like Marcus. He burst into Marcus's quarters without knocking, his beta instinct screaming wrongness. The room looked normal at first glance. But Cale had been trained to see what others missed. There, a false bottom in the desk drawer. He pried it open and found what made his blood freeze. Vials of the same poison. Letters written in code. And a dried flower he recognized from his war campaigns in the north. Shadow bloom. A plant that only grew in shadow wolf territory, poisonous to regular wolves, and the exact compound used in the water supply. Marcus had done this. Had framed Alara. Had manipulated them all. But why? Cale dug deeper and found a journal tucked behind the false panel. He opened it with shaking hands and read words that rewrote everything he thought he knew. Day 47, the Shadow King promises my sister will return if I help open the rift. All I need is the Moonborn girl's blood at full power. Everything I've done, earning the king's trust, becoming his beta, waiting all these years, it's all been for this moment. Day 89, she's arrived. The last daughter. She's even more powerful than the prophecy suggested. I can feel it radiating from her. Soon. Soon I'll have my revenge on the bloodlines that murdered my family. Page after page of planning. Manipulation. Treason. Cale's hands clenched on the journal. He'd trusted Marcus for 15 years. Had considered him a brother. And all along, he'd been the enemy. The mating bond flared with sudden, agonizing intensity. Alara's pain crashed through him like a physical blow, driving him to his knees. She was breaking. He could feel it. Feel her slipping away into darkness and despair. No, he gasped. Alara, hold on. I'm coming. He ran. The silver dungeons were deeper than most people knew. Cale descended the stairs 3 at a time, past the guard station that sat empty. Wrong, why is it empty? And through the heavy door that should have been locked. The cell door hung open. Inside, Alara stood in the center of the room, but she wasn't herself anymore. Her eyes had bled completely black, shadows writhing around her like living things. The silver walls sparked and hissed where the darkness touched them, and the air itself seemed to bend around her. Alara. His voice came out rough. She turned, and he barely recognized her. This wasn't the frightened girl he'd trained. This was something ancient and terrible, power barely contained in a mortal shell. You're too late, she said, and her voice echoed with a dozen others. I've already fallen. No, you haven't. Cale stepped forward slowly, hands raised. You're still here. Still fighting. I can feel it through the bond. The bond. She laughed, bitter and broken. The bond that made you imprison me? That made you choose duty over trust? Over me? I was wrong. The words tasted like ash. I was terrified of repeating the past, and I did exactly that. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't fix this. The shadows around her spiked. Sorry doesn't erase the pain. The fear. The loneliness. I know. Cale took another step, his heart hammering. But I'm here now. And I'm not leaving. Not this time. He did something no alpha had done in living memory. He bared his neck. Full submission. Complete vulnerability. If you need to hurt someone, hurt me, he said quietly. I deserve it. But don't let the darkness win. Don't become what they feared. That's not who you are, Alara. That's not the woman I. He caught himself, but she heard what he didn't say. The woman you what? Her voice cracked. Love? You don't even know me. I know you didn't poison anyone. I know you're kind even when the world has given you every reason to be cruel. I know you're stronger than anyone I've ever met. He held her black gaze. And I know that in another life, I loved you enough to spend eternity regretting your death. Maybe that's why the bond is forming now. Maybe we're supposed to get it right this time. The darkness wavered. Behind the black, he caught a glimpse of Violet. You hurt me, she whispered. I know. You didn't believe me. I know. Why should I trust you now? Because I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to trust yourself. The part of you that's still fighting. The part that knows darkness isn't the answer. He took a final step, close enough to touch her. Come back, Alara. Please. For a moment, nothing happened. The shadows coiled tighter, and Cale thought he'd failed. Then Alara shattered. The darkness collapsed inward, and she collapsed with it. Cale caught her before she hit the ground, pulling her against his chest as she sobbed, deep, wrenching sounds that tore at his heart. I remember, she gasped against his shoulder. I remember us. That life. The silver grass. Your promise. I remember too. He held her tighter. I'm so sorry. For then. For now. For all of it. I forgave you. She pulled back to look at him, her eyes violet again but swimming with tears. In that life, with my dying breath, I forgave you. Because I understood. And I'm choosing to forgive you now too. Cale cupped her face, thumbs brushing away tears. I don't deserve. None of us deserve anything. We just choose what we're going to do with what we're given. She managed a shaky smile. So choose, Cale. Right here, right now. What do you choose? You. The word came without hesitation. I choose you. He kissed her. Finally. Desperately. Pouring into it every apology, every regret, every promise he should have made sooner. And Alara kissed him back, the mating bond snapping fully into place with a surge of power that made the silver walls scream. They broke apart, both breathing hard. We need to stop Marcus, Alara said. He's planning something. He's working with shadow wolves, trying to open some kind of rift. An explosion rocked the dungeon. Dust rained from the ceiling. Then screaming. Fighting. The clash of weapons. Cale pulled Alara to her feet. What the hell? They ran up the stairs and emerged into chaos. The palace was at war with itself. Half the guards fought the other half, brother against brother in a civil war that had erupted in minutes. Bodies already littered the corridors. And in the center of the throne room, visible through the massive doors, stood Marcus. But he wasn't alone. Shadow wolves surrounded him, dozens of them, their red eyes glowing in the firelight. And behind him, a rift was tearing open in reality itself, bleeding darkness into the world. Marcus saw them and smiled. Perfect timing. I was hoping you'd make it. Marcus, what have you done? Cale's voice was deadly quiet. What I should have done years ago. Marcus drew a blade that pulsed with dark energy. The Shadow King has promised me godhood in exchange for one simple thing, the last Moonborn's blood, spilled at the moment of her full awakening. He raised the blade. And your awakening, dear Alara, is complete. Thank you for that. Now hold still. This will only hurt for eternity. If you are enjoying this video, do well to like this video and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 6. The throne room had become an abattoir. Cale's blade sang through the air, cutting down a shadow wolf that lunged for Alara's back. She whirled, shadows erupting from her hands to pin two of Marcus's corrupted guards against the wall. They moved like dancers, like warriors who'd trained together for years instead of days. The mating bond thrummed between them, a living thread that let them anticipate each other's movements, share strength when one faltered. Left. Alara screamed. Cale ducked, and her shadow blade whistled over his head, taking down the assassin he hadn't seen. He felt her exhaustion through the bond. She was running on fumes, her power still recovering from the silver dungeons. But she wouldn't stop. Couldn't. Because behind Marcus, the rift kept tearing wider. It was a wound in reality itself, bleeding darkness and wrong into the world. Things with too many teeth and not enough form crawled through, nightmare wolves that moved like liquid shadow. Their eyes were empty voids, and their fangs dripped with something that hissed and smoked when it hit stone. Lord Garrett fought beside them, his face grim. We can't hold them much longer. There are too many. Then we end this at the source. Cale grabbed Alara's hand, and power surged between them, his strength, her magic, combining into something neither could achieve alone. With me? Always. She squeezed his fingers. Let's finish this. They cut through the chaos like a blade through water. Guards fell or scattered. Shadow wolves dissolved under Alara's power, their forms too unstable to withstand Moonborn magic. And all the while, Cale felt what she felt, determination, terror, love so fierce it burned. She loved him. The bond made it impossible to hide. And gods help him, he loved her back. They burst into the throne room proper, and the full horror of Marcus's ritual became clear. The throne, Cale's throne, had been shoved aside. In its place, Marcus had drawn a massive circle in blood. Captured wolves from the eastern barracks hung suspended in chains around the circle's perimeter, unconscious or dead. Their blood fed into channels carved in the stone, flowing toward the center where Marcus stood with his dark blade raised. Cale. Lady Petra's voice came from the far side of the room. She and a handful of loyal guards were pinned down behind overturned furniture, fighting off corrupted wolves. The ritual, he's using their life force to anchor the rift. I know. Cale's jaw clenched. Those were his people. His wolves. Under his protection. And he'd failed them. Not yet, you haven't, Alara said quietly, feeling his guilt through the bond. We can still save them. Marcus heard them and turned, his smile wide and terrible. The king and his monster bride. How poetic. Stand down, Marcus. Cale's voice carried command, alpha power that should have made any wolf drop to their knees. Whatever the Shadow King promised you, it's a lie. Close the rift before it's too late. Too late? Marcus laughed, the sound edged with madness. It's been too late since the moment I swore my oath 15 years ago. Since I watched my sister burn because your ancestors decided her moonborn blood made her an abomination. His eyes cut to Alara. At least she'll be avenged. At least her death will mean something. Your sister wouldn't want this, Alara said. She wouldn't want you to become the very thing that destroyed your family. You don't know what she'd want. You didn't see her screaming as the flames consumed her. Didn't hold her charred body while the alphas congratulated themselves on another successful purge. Marcus's voice broke. She was 8 years old. The words hit like physical blows. Elara felt them through her own memories, her father's execution, her mother's murder, all the innocents caught in wars they didn't start. "I'm sorry," she said, and meant it. "I'm so sorry that happened to her. To you. But Marcus, this won't bring her back. The Shadow King is using your grief. Your rage. He doesn't care about your sister. He only wants power." Marcus nodded. "Yes, I know. And he's promised to share it. Promised that when I ascend to godhood, I'll have the strength to rewrite reality itself. To go back and save her. To undo the purge." "That's impossible," Kale said. "Not even gods can change the past. Then I'll become something greater than a god." Marcus slashed his blade across his palm, blood dripping into the circle. "And all I need is the catalyst. Her blood. Her power. The last moonborn, sacrificed at the moment of her full awakening." The rift pulsed, and more nightmare wolves poured through. They didn't attack Marcus, they turned on Kale's guards instead, overwhelming them through sheer numbers. "Now!" Kale roared. He and Elara moved as one. She sent shadows to free the captured wolves while Kale engaged Marcus directly. Their blades met with a sound like thunder, and Kale felt the unnatural strength behind his beta strike. Marcus had already taken some of the Shadow King's power. Was already more than wolf. "You can't beat me," Marcus said, pressing forward. "I've been preparing for this moment since before you took the throne. Every strategy you know, I taught you. Every weakness, I memorized." He was right. Marcus had trained Kale, had served as his second for over a decade. Knew how he moved, how he thought. But Marcus didn't know about the bond. Elara's power flowed through their connection, enhancing Kale's speed, his strength. She fed him information. He favors his right side, the left knee is injured from an old wound, he's preparing a feint, and suddenly Kale was faster than Marcus anticipated. His blade found flesh. Marcus stumbled back, blood blooming across his ribs. Clever, Marcus admitted. But insufficient. He thrust his hand toward the rift, and darkness exploded outward. It caught Kale and Elara both, slamming them against the wall hard enough to crack stone. Kale's vision went white with pain. Through the bond, he felt Elara struggling to breathe, felt her ribs screaming. But he also felt her power rising in response to the threat, vast and terrible. "No," he gasped. "Elara, don't." Too late. Her eyes bled to black again, and shadows erupted from her body like wings. The nightmare wolves trying to attack them simply ceased. They dissolved into nothing, unmade by power that was beyond mortal comprehension. Marcus's eyes widened. Yes. Yes. That's it. That's the power we need. He began chanting in a language that hurt to hear, each syllable like nails on the inside of Kale's skull. The blood circle flared with sickly green light, and the rift tore wider still. And Elara. Elara was changing. The darkness poured off her in waves, responding to her rage, her pain, her desperate need to protect. But Kale felt her slipping through the bond, felt her consciousness fracturing under the weight of that much power. The prophecy is self-fulfilling, he realized with horror. If she uses her full power to stop this, she'll lose herself. Become the darkness everyone feared. But if she doesn't, the shadow realm will consume us all. It was the same choice as before. The same impossible situation that had ended with his blade through her heart 300 years ago. Not this time. He refused to let history repeat. Elara. He forced himself upright, every movement agony. Listen to me. Her black eyes found his. There was still recognition there, but it was fading fast. The prophecy doesn't have to win, Kale said, stumbling toward her. We can change it. Together. How? Her voice echoed with power. I can feel it, Kale. If I stop holding back, if I use everything I am, I'll become the monster. The destroyer. But if I don't, everyone dies anyway. Then we find a third option. He reached her and took her face in his hands, ignoring the way the shadows writhing around her burned his skin. You channel the darkness into me. Through the bond. And I'll anchor you to the light. Share the burden. That could kill you. Kill us both. Then we die together. He pressed his forehead to hers. But we don't let the darkness win. We don't let fear make our choices. We choose love. Choose trust. Choose each other. Through the bond, he felt her waver. Felt hope spark in the darkness consuming her. Together, she whispered. Together. Their lips met, and the bond exploded with power. Ilara's darkness poured into Kale, not attacking, but flowing like water finding a new channel. It was agony and ecstasy, death and life, every contradiction existing simultaneously. He felt his body trying to reject it, felt it trying to corrupt him the way it had corrupted the original Moonborn. But he also felt Ilara's light. Her core of goodness that no amount of pain had destroyed. Her capacity for forgiveness, for love, for hope against impossible odds. And he held on to that like a lifeline, anchoring them both. The shadows around Ilara began to change. Instead of the oily, consuming darkness, they became something else. Twilight. The space between light and dark where both could exist without destroying each other. Balance. Marcus saw what was happening and screamed in rage. No. You're ruining everything. He plunged his blade into the blood circle center, and the rift exploded outward. The Shadow King emerged. He wasn't a wolf. Wasn't anything that had a name. He was void given form, absence made present. Where he stepped, reality cracked and bled. His shape shifted constantly, sometimes bipedal, sometimes something else entirely. But his eyes were ancient and hungry and fixed on Ilara with terrible recognition. When he spoke, his voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Daughter. Kale felt Ilara's shock ripple through the bond. No. That's impossible. Is it? The Shadow King moved closer, and plants withered in his wake. Stone aged centuries in seconds. Did you never wonder why your power felt different from the Moonborn of legend? Why you could touch both light and darkness? My father was a traitor. A wolf who was a convenient lie. The Shadow King's form solidified slightly, taking on features that were sickeningly familiar. Ilara's eyes, her bone structure, twisted through a lens of horror. Your mother, Lyanna, was Moonborn. But she was also mine. We loved each other, she and I, in the brief time before the goddess discovered our union. You're lying, Ilara breathed. The moon goddess cursed our love. Cursed our bloodline. Declared that any child born of shadow and moon would be the harbinger of the end times. The Shadow King reached toward her. You, my daughter, are that child. The prophecy isn't about choice. It's about inevitability. You were born to bring about the twilight of the gods. Born to unmake reality itself and birth something new. No. But Ilara's voice shook. Yes. And deep down, you've always known. The Shadow King's smile was terrible. Why else would your mother bind your power? Why else would she die to keep you hidden? She knew what you were. What you'd become. Through the bond, Kale felt Ilara's world crumbling. Felt her questioning everything she thought she knew about herself, her parents, her purpose. It doesn't matter, Kale said firmly, pulling her against him. Whatever you were born to be, you choose who you become. That's what makes you different from him. You have free will. Love. Hope. Hope. The Shadow King laughed, and stars died in distant galaxies. Hope is the cruelest lie the gods ever told. But you'll understand soon enough. When you take your place beside me. When you help me unmake the goddess's flawed creation and build something better from the ashes. He extended his hand. Come home, daughter. Embrace what you are. And together, we'll show them all what twilight truly means. If you are enjoying this video, do well to like this video and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 7. The Shadow King's offer hung in the air like poison. Elara stood frozen, caught between the monster who claimed to be her father and the man she loved at her back. Through the shattered throne room windows, she could see dawn breaking, light fighting against the unnatural darkness bleeding from the rift. Think about it, daughter. The Shadow King's voice was almost gentle. Almost loving. Every prayer you sent to the moon goddess. Every plea for help, for guidance, for just one sign that you mattered. Did she ever answer? Elara's throat tightened. No. Of course not. Because to her, you're an abomination. Evidence of her failure to control what she created. He moved closer, and reality warped around him. Do you know why she ordered the Moonborn purge? Because they were corrupted. Dangerous. Because your mother, my beloved Lyanna, chose me over her divine calling. The Shadow King's form rippled with something that might have been grief. The goddess gave the Moonborn power to be her champions. Her perfect, obedient servants. But Lyanna looked at the being of shadow and void that I am, and she saw beauty. Saw love. Chose darkness over divine light. He gestured, and images formed in the air, memories pulled from somewhere beyond time. Elara saw her mother, younger and radiant with silver hair like hers, meeting a figure in the shadows. Saw them fall in love against every law of nature and divinity. Saw the moon goddess's rage when she discovered the betrayal. The purge wasn't about protecting the kingdoms, the Shadow King said softly. It was punishment. Jealousy. The goddess couldn't bear that one of her chosen would prefer the dark to her light. So she declared the entire Moonborn line corrupt and had them slaughtered. Men, women, children, all killed for one woman's choice to love freely. The images shifted. Elara watched her mother flee, pregnant and terrified, watched her bind herself to a common wolf to hide what her child truly was. Watched her use dark magic to suppress Elara's power, knowing it would slowly kill her from the inside out. She died to protect you from the goddess's wrath, the Shadow King said. She knew that if your true nature was discovered, you'd be hunted down and destroyed. Just like all the others. It was tempting. Gods, it was tempting. Elara had spent her entire life as an outcast. Cursed. Unwanted. The idea of belonging somewhere, of being valued, of having family, it pulled at something deep and desperate inside her. And all I have to do is help you destroy reality, she asked. All you have to do is help me remake it into something better. Something where love doesn't require divine permission. Where power doesn't corrupt because there are no false gods to corrupt it. The Shadow King extended his hand again. Come with me, Elara. Let me teach you what you really are. What we can become together. Behind her, Kale's hand found hers. The bond pulsed, warm, steady, real. He's offering you everything you think you want, Kale said quietly. But it's built on a lie. What lie? The Shadow King's voice turned sharp. I've told her only truth. The lie that power and belonging are the same thing. That you have to choose between light and darkness. Kale stepped beside Elara, still holding her hand. She doesn't belong to you or the goddess. She belongs to herself. Elara looked at Kale. Really looked at him. He was scarred from a dozen battles, exhausted from sharing her burden, and staring down a being that could unmake him with a thought. But he stood there anyway. Not because prophecy demanded it. Not because divine mandate required it. Because he chose to. The goddess never answered my prayers, Elara said slowly. But you know what? She's not here. Hasn't been here through any of this. The only one who's been here is Kale. Imperfect, mortal, stubborn Kale who chose me not because of what I am, but despite it. Sentiment, the Shadow King hissed. Weakness. No. Elara felt something click into place inside her, a certainty that transcended fear or doubt. It's the only thing that's real. You're offering me power, but Kale gave me choice. You're offering belonging, but he gave me freedom. You say you love me, but love doesn't demand you become something you're not. She squeezed Kale's hand, and through the bond, she felt his fierce pride in her. I don't want to be darkness or light, Alara declared. I don't want to be your weapon or the goddess's champion. I just want to be myself. And myself is someone who chooses love over power. Who chooses freedom over belonging. Who chooses the hard, messy, beautiful reality over your perfect void. The Shadow King's form rippled with rage. You're making a mistake. Maybe. But it's my mistake to make. Alara raised her hands, and power gathered, not the consuming darkness or the divine light, but something in between. Twilight. The balance that the Moonborn had lost and the Shadow King had never understood. Now get the hell out of my world. She unleashed everything. The twilight magic hit the Shadow King like a battering ram. He screamed, a sound that shattered windows and cracked the throne, but the power didn't destroy him. Couldn't destroy something made of void. Instead, it pushed him back toward the rift he'd emerged from. You can't banish me, he roared. I'm your father. Your blood. Your destiny. You're my biology, Alara corrected, pouring more power into the assault. But you're not my family. You're not my future. And you're sure as hell not my destiny. Kale added his strength to hers through the bond. Together, they were a force of nature, mortal determination married to divine power, creating something neither God nor shadow could stand against. The Shadow King fought. Reality buckled and tore under the strain. But slowly, inexorably, he was forced back through the rift. This isn't over. His voice echoed from the void. You're still mine, daughter. Still my blood. One day, you'll. Alara slammed the rift shut with the last of her strength. Silence crashed down like a physical weight. The nightmare wolves dissolved. The darkness receded. And Alara felt her moonborn power burning away like morning mist, the price of using twilight magic to close what should never have been opened. She was becoming mortal. Alara? Kale caught her as her legs buckled. Through the bond, she felt his alarm. What's happening? The power, I'm losing it. Burning it away. She tried to smile. Guess that solves the prophecy problem. Can't bring eternal darkness if you're just human. No. Kale pulled her closer. You can't, we'll find another way. A blade erupted from his chest. Time stopped. Alara stared at the silver dagger protruding from Kale's sternum, watched his blood, impossibly red, impossibly bright, pour over the blade's edge. Behind him, Marcus stood with a smile of pure insanity. If I can't have godhood, he gasped, bleeding from a dozen wounds, then no one gets their happy ending. Kale's eyes went wide. He tried to speak, but only blood came out. The mate bond shattered. Alara felt it break, felt the thread connecting them snap like an overstressed rope. The pain was beyond physical. Beyond mental. It was her soul being torn in half. No. The scream ripped from her throat. No. Power exploded from her, not twilight, not balance, but pure, undiluted anguish. It caught Marcus and simply unmade him. He didn't burn or dissolve. He just ceased to exist, as if he'd never been. The rift tried to reopen, drawn by that much raw emotion. But Alara's grief-fueled power sealed it permanently, welding reality back together so thoroughly that nothing would ever tear it open again. Then the power guttered out, and she was left holding Kale as he collapsed. No, no, no. She lowered him to the floor, hands pressing against the wound that wouldn't stop bleeding. Silver. The dagger had been silver. Poisoning him. Killing him. Stay with me. Please, Kale, stay with me. His hand found her face, trembling. Did it work? Is it over? Yes. Yes, it's over. You did it. We did it. Tears streamed down her face. Now stay alive. That's an order from your queen. He tried to smile. Failed. Elara. I'm sorry. Sorry I didn't trust you sooner. Sorry I wasted so much time. Don't you dare say goodbye. She looked around desperately. Help. Someone help him. But the survivors were too far away, and she could see the silver spreading through his veins like poison, killing him one heartbeat at a time. It's okay, Kale whispered. Worth it. You're worth it. No. I refuse. I didn't survive all this just to lose you. Elara pressed her forehead to his, and the broken bond between them flickered weakly. Through it, she felt his life ebbing. Felt death reaching for him with greedy fingers. And then she heard it. A voice from beyond the sealed rift, barely audible, but clear enough. You have the power to save him, daughter. Embrace what I offered. Embrace the darkness fully, and you can pull him back from death's door. All you have to do is accept your birthright. Accept me. And he lives. Elara raised her head, staring at the place where the rift had been. If I do this, if I take your power, I become yours? Forever, the Shadow King confirmed. You'll be bound to me. To darkness. You'll lose your mortality, your humanity, everything that makes you Elara. But he lives. That's the trade. She looked down at Kale. His eyes were closing. Blood pooled beneath them, too much blood. Through the dying bond, she felt his answer before he could voice it, don't. Let me go. Don't become a monster for me. But she'd already made her choice. I accept, Elara said. Darkness exploded through the sealed rift, wrapping around her like chains made of void. She felt it sink into her bones, her blood, her soul. Felt her mortality burning away, not gradually like before, but all at once, consumed by power that was never meant for mortal flesh. And she felt herself changing. Losing pieces of who she was. Becoming something else. Something darker. But Kale gasped. The silver receded from his veins. The wound began to close. He would live. Even if she was losing herself to save him. The Shadow King's laughter echoed in her mind. Welcome home, daughter. Now and forever. Chapter 8. Darkness wrapped around Elara like a shroud, the Shadow King's power sinking deeper with every heartbeat. She could feel herself changing, feel pieces of who she was being consumed, replaced by something ancient and terrible. But Kale was breathing. His wound was closing. He would live. That was all that mattered. No, a small voice whispered in the back of her mind. That's not all that matters. It sounded like her mother. Elara gasped as a memory surfaced, not a vision from the ancestral spirits, but something real. Her mother holding her as a child, whispering words Elara had forgotten until this moment. You're made of both light and darkness, my love. But you're also made of something neither your father nor the goddess understands. You're made of choice. Of love. And that makes you stronger than either of them. Love. The one thing the Shadow King had never truly felt. The one thing the Moon Goddess had twisted into control and obedience. The one thing that couldn't be commanded or corrupted or contained. The one thing that made Elara human. Wait, Elara choked out. The darkness paused, confused by her resistance. I'm not done. The Shadow King's voice roared in her mind. You accepted the bargain. You're mine. I accepted your power to save him. But you never asked what I'd do with it once I had it. Elara looked down at Kale, barely conscious but alive. Through the broken bond, she felt him trying to reach for her. And what I'm going to do is give it away. That's impossible. You can't. Watch me. Elara bent and kissed Kale. Not a kiss of passion or desperation, but something deeper. A choice made manifest. Through the broken bond's remnants, threads still connecting them even after the shattering, she pushed. Not darkness. Not power. But the one thing she'd never wanted, the thing that had been slowly killing her from the moment it awakened, her divinity. Her immortality. The moonborn birthright that forced godhood into a mortal body. She gave it to him. Through the kiss, through the bond, through sheer force of will, Alara transferred everything the Shadow King had just given her and everything the moon goddess had cursed her with. All of it flowed into Kale, not as a weapon or a curse, but as a gift. A choice. Live, she thought. Live long enough to make the world better. Live long enough to remember me. The silver poison in Kale's veins met the divine power and burned away like mist in sunlight. His wound sealed completely. His chest rose with a full, clear breath. And Alara felt her power disappear. Not burning away slowly this time. Just, gone. Peacefully, quietly gone, like a burden she'd finally set down. She collapsed beside Kale, gasping. Mortal. Fully, completely, blessedly mortal. The Shadow King's scream of rage shook the foundations of the palace, but it came from far away now. From beyond the sealed rift, from a place he could no longer reach. You fool. You could have been a god. Could have had everything. I already have everything, Alara whispered. I have choice. Then his voice faded completely, and there was only silence. And Kale, gasping awake beside her. Alara? His hand found hers, and she felt no bond, not the mate bond, not divine power, nothing but two people choosing to hold on to each other. What did you do? Saved us both. She managed a weak smile. How do you feel? He sat up slowly, checking his chest where the wound had been. Nothing. Not even a scar. I feel strong. Different. His eyes met hers, and she saw the understanding dawn. You gave me your power. I gave you a choice. You can keep it or let it fade. Use it or ignore it. It's yours now, not the goddess's. Not my father's. Yours. And you? I'm human. She laughed, and it came out half sob. Completely, wonderfully human. No prophecy. No destiny. Just me. Kale pulled her into his arms and held her like he'd never let go. Just you is more than enough. Around them, the survivors began emerging from hiding. Lady Petra, bleeding but alive. Lord Garrett, supporting wounded guards. The captured wolves from Marcus's ritual, freed and confused but breathing. They stared at their king and the woman he held, and Alara waited for the fear. The rejection. Instead, Lord Garrett dropped to one knee. Your Majesties. One by one, the others followed. Kneeling not in fear, but in respect. The traitor Marcus is dead, Lady Petra announced, her voice carrying. Long live King Kale. Long live Queen Alara. The words echoed through the shattered throne room, and Alara felt tears slip down her cheeks. She was finally home. The next 6 months passed in a blur of rebuilding and revelation. Kale called a grand council, representatives from every pack in the kingdom and beyond. The truth came out piece by piece, Marcus's betrayal, the real history of the Moonborn Purge, the goddess's jealousy and the Shadow King's manipulation. Some wolves still looked at Alara with fear. But Kale made his position clear in the first council session. She is my queen. My mate. My choice. And anyone who challenges her challenges me. No one challenged him. They established new laws. No bloodline would ever be hunted for what they were born as. No one would be judged for their ancestry or their power. And those who found themselves packless or outcast would have sanctuary in Bloodstone. Alara threw herself into that last project with fierce determination. She converted the eastern wing of the palace into a haven for wolves with nowhere else to go. For Omegas rejected by their packs. For anyone who'd ever felt cursed or unwanted. Because I know what that feels like, she told Kale one night as they walked through the nearly finished sanctuary. And no one should have to feel that way. Not anymore. He pulled her close and kissed her temple. You're going to change the world. We're going to change it, she corrected. Together. The moon goddess never apologized. But one night, as Alara slept, she appeared in a dream. She was beautiful, painfully so, with silver light radiating from her skin. But her eyes held something Alara hadn't expected: respect. You succeeded where I failed, the goddess said without preamble. I tried to control the balance between light and dark. You chose to be the balance. I chose to be human, Alara replied. Yes. And in doing so, you proved stronger than any divine power I could have granted. The goddess tilted her head. I cannot undo what was done. Cannot bring back those lost in the purge. But I can offer this, my blessing on you and yours. May your children carry not a curse, but a gift. What kind of gift? The goddess smiled, enigmatic. The gift of choice. Always. Then she faded, and Alara woke to find Kale watching her with concerned eyes. Bad dream? He asked. No. She snuggled closer. Just closure. Their coronation happened under a full moon, 6 months to the day after Marcus's betrayal. The throne room had been rebuilt, but they'd made changes. The blood circle was gone, replaced by a mosaic of silver and gold representing all the packs in the kingdom. The throne itself was smaller, more welcoming. This wasn't about dominance anymore. It was about service. Alara wore silver, not black, not the mourning colors she'd hidden behind for so long. Her hair fell loose down her back, and she wore no veil. She had nothing left to hide. Kale stood beside her in ceremonial armor, looking every inch the Alpha King. But when he took her hand, his grip was gentle. Loving. You ready? He whispered. With you? Always. The ceremony was beautiful. Lord Garrett performed the rites, binding them as true mates before the moon and the assembled packs. When it came time for the final vows, Kale went off script. I vow to choose you, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Not because destiny demands it. Not because prophecy requires it. But because you make me want to be better than I am. Because you're brave and kind and stubborn as hell. Because I love you, Alara. Just you. Human and perfect exactly as you are. Alara's throat tightened. I vow to choose you right back. To stand beside you when things are hard. To argue with you when you're being an idiot. To love you when you're not perfect, because perfect is boring anyway. Laughter rippled through the crowd. And, she added softly, to build with you a kingdom where no one has to hide what they are. Where power doesn't corrupt, and love doesn't require permission. Kale pulled her close and kissed her as the crowd erupted in cheers. For the first time in her life, Alara felt no divine power, no darkness lurking at the edges of her consciousness. Just peace. Just love. Just the absolutely ordinary, absolutely extraordinary feeling of being exactly who she was meant to be. Human. Flawed. Free. 6 months later, Alara stood in their private chambers, staring at the healer's confirmation with shaking hands. Pregnant. She was pregnant. Terror and joy warred in her chest. A child. Their child. What if it inherited power? What if the curse wasn't really broken? What if... Alara? Kale entered, took one look at her face, and crossed the room. What's wrong? She handed him the letter. Watched his eyes scan it. Watched shock and wonder and fear chase across his features. A baby, he breathed. We're having a baby. Are you happy? She had to know. Or scared? Both. He pulled her against him. Terrified, actually. What if our child inherits your power? What if despite everything, the prophecy? Then we teach them what no one taught me, Alara interrupted. She took his hand and placed it on her still flat belly. That power doesn't define you. Choices do. That they're loved no matter what they are or aren't. That they belong not because of destiny, but because they're ours. Kale's eyes shone. You're going to be an amazing mother. We're going to be amazing parents, she corrected. Together. They stood like that as the sun rose through the windows, painting the room in shades of gold and amber. Below, the kingdom was waking, wolves heading to work, children playing in streets that were finally safe, packless wolves finding sanctuary in the home Alara had built. A new era. A new beginning. What are you thinking? Kale asked. Alara leaned into him, feeling the steady beat of his heart. That we did it. We changed the story. Broke the prophecy. Chose love over fear. And I'm thinking that this, she gestured to the sunrise, the kingdom, the life growing inside her, this is what victory looks like. Not perfect. Not divine. Just real. Kale pressed a kiss to her hair. Real is pretty damn good. Yeah. Alara smiled, watching the sun climb higher. It really is. In the distance, wolves howled greeting to the new day. No longer divided by bloodline or prophecy, but united by choice. By the simple, radical decision to build something better than what came before. And in that moment, with her mate beside her and their child growing beneath her heart, Alara finally understood what her mother had tried to tell her all those years ago. Power was nothing compared to love. Destiny was nothing compared to choice. And divinity was nothing compared to the messy, beautiful, perfectly imperfect reality of being human. She was no longer the cursed Omega or the moonborn weapon or the last daughter of a dying bloodline. She was simply Alara. And that was everything. I know you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this channel. Do well to share your thoughts in the comments section below. The end.